Is it worth picking up the sequel? I would definitely say yes. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be talking about the Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, which is book 2 in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, the sequel to the Jasmine Throne. Now, I, quite a while ago, read The Jasmine Throne when it actually first came out. It was one of the first e-arcs I ever did on NetGalley, and it was one where I wasn't really sure on it because I got it and everybody was talking about the romance and everything. I'm like, oh, is this just going to be like a romance book with some fantasy elements? And even then I commented, it definitely is not. There are romance elements in here, but there is quite a lot more going on. And the first book I liked, but there were some things where I just felt like we didn't quite get where we were going. I was really interested in the world, but it was setting up a lot for the trilogy, which made sense. And so I was curious, and I ended up picking up book 2 when I randomly found it at Barnes & Noble, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that first book, so I was interested to continue. Now, I'm going to keep this fairly spoiler free, and so briefly, in case you haven't read the first one and you're wanting to know if you should pick it up, I wanted to cover that briefly. And I definitely, I think this second book continues on a lot of the stuff from the first book in a good way, builds on it, and has a lot of great elements. And so in general, I think this is a series worth picking up. It's not anything that's been like mind-blowing, but I maintain it's the magic that's presented in the first, which involves the deathless waters and like the children of the temple and everything going on there, as well as the overall plot of we have Malini, who is wanting to go against her brother, who's the emperor, and this setup there of the world and kind of the different magic systems / religion all set up. Really, really fascinating stuff, and those have been what has interested me the most about this series. I will say though, like I said, there is an element of romance here, and especially in book 2, might have to be one of my absolute favorite romances I've ever read, because it's still not the focus, but it is incredibly relevant to the plot for reasons I can't get into quite yet without having it be spoilers. So really quick, just saying, but the romance elements are done really, really well. Very compelling to read. We do find out even more about the kind of the magic around Arianya, and I'm trying so hard to pronounce things. I did hybrid read this. I did some audio and some physical, so I learned how to pronounce some of the things a little bit better, but there's still a lot of things like the main empire. No matter how many times I hear the narrator say it, I can't pronounce it. I can't get it to come out. But the magic of that place, the Deathless Waters, the Yaksa who had been there before, and how they can get some of that power, and just how that really works is fascinating to me. So we do get more here. So definitely something I think worth picking up. Now with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this book, and I'm still going to be a spoiler-free fashion for this book, but this is a sequel, so if you've not read The Jasmine Throne, you probably shouldn't watch from here, because I'm going to be talking about things that book set up and that we then see here. So it's just important to note that, yeah, you will have needed to have read that book to continue. But so we have at the end of the Jasmine Throne, where Malini there's a prophecy saying she's going to become empress. She's kind of taking that title and then is getting ready to go against her brother and fight. And that's a big part of what we're looking at here. Her gathering her support, her armies, and then trying to go against him and prove that she's really the one that the nameless god and the mothers that are set up want to be empress and not him be the emperor. Still playing a pretty important role is the idea of sacrifice, which was something in the beginning of the Jasmine Throne. She is basically being exiled because she was unwilling to be a willing sacrifice by being burned alive in order to go basically and give get powers from the mothers being women who had sacrificed themselves and then given great power to the people of Paratajat. I can't quite say it, but it's something to that effect. I did warn you on pronunciations in order to defeat the Yaxa that were their enemies, and it's talked about basically the nature of the sacrifice. And this is something that is very specifically used because it's only women that are sacrificed. Yet at the same time, there is real, actual power, and using this to call the mother's fire, that is a real thing that does exist. And so it's interesting to see that when it's this thing where it's not like the culture is, oh, we sacrifice the women and we're not actually really getting anything. It's not something where we're discovering like, oh my gosh, this is all just, terrible lies. It's like, no, it's a terrible thing. But the willing sacrifice does grant real power to be used against enemies. And so a fascinating part there. We also had Priya's story where she was once again going into the Deathless Waters and becoming an elder of that religion following the Yaxa. But there's more to it. And it was the end of the Jasmine Throne. The way it was kind of presented, that there is kind of a darker touch to this magic that they're granted and the powers that they're granted. It was really fascinating. The first book set up the rot, which slowly starts like turning people basically in plant-like until they end up dying. And so we have Priya now an elder who is trained to deal with that, with leading when she's still very young, as well as figuring out what's going on with the rot. And so that plot line, we definitely get some more on. It gives some really interesting questions to the nature of the Yaxa and this magic, as well as the fight between. This is where, though, I really wanted more of that. We do learn more, and we do have a fair amount, but that's what I was the most fascinated about, and I don't feel like I got quite enough of that in this book, which was really the only thing knocking it down, because this was a very compelling and gripping book. I really enjoyed the story, how we had both of these plot lines advancing. There was a ton of really great stuff too and set up, and I think the last book definitely is, assuming it sticks to landing, I think will really elevate the series more. I was just looking for a bit more in this book. I felt like what we had, I really enjoyed and I thought was great, but I really wanted to have a little bit more in that direction. And so that's kind of the only really knock I had for this book. I felt like it could have done a bit more. And I get it's a trilogy and it's going at the pace. The first book, though, it was similar where it set up a lot of interesting things, but I just felt like so far for the page count we've had with the first two books, I feel like we could have done a little bit more. So it's one of those things where I wonder after finishing this if it's going to be the kind of book that feels like maybe it should have been two books instead of a trilogy, but trilogy is kind of the format that's accepted, especially in fantasy. So I think that may have something to play into it. But those plot lines, like I said, we get a ton more here in the book, and it does a great job of advancing, showing more things that are going to be happening while still giving us more questions. And the romance that I commented on, because it's super, super relevant and I think handled in a fantastic way, is we have Malini and Priya and their romance elements from the first book. But the problem here is that while Priya is loyal to Malini, and Malini has basically made promises that the Aryani people would be free from the Empire if she helps, they're both stuck between basically loyalties to their countries and to their religion/power structures for magic and to each other, and just kind of that tragic romance and the way that it's used, where they both have these other duties, and how that was put in, I thought was really fantastic, especially some elements of it where we really look into it toward the end of this book. I just thought were handled extremely well, and once again sets up where it's like, how is this going to work in the third book? And it really adds a depth to both the characters and to the story. And so while I'm still not a huge fan of romance, I have to really just give Tasha Suri credit for including those elements, including them very well, having them actually fit the story, be important to the story, but not really the focus. And I know a lot of people are still probably going to focus more on that than I will. Like I said, those aren't really the reasons that I'm enjoying the book. But in this book, it was done in such an interesting way, in a way that really did enhance the story. So it wasn't like I'm like, I got to get through the romance part. It's like, no, it was a pivotal pivotal, I can't talk anymore, guys, I'm sorry. I probably should just edit these things out, but I'm like, why not? It was a pivotal part of the story. It was very important, and it played a lot into the conflict between these two characters, their countries, and the different kind of magic systems, because of the fact that the Yaksa are the like ancient enemies of the Parajati people, and that was what the whole point. The original, the mothers, they sacrificed themselves in order to bring Mother's Fire that could be used to defeat the Yaksa. And so with kind of that group of people from Ariani and their magic starting to become more powerful than becoming a force, even though Priya and Malini have loyalty to each other, it's their groups and countries and people, there's a lot of distrust between them, and that seems like that's going to play an even bigger role in the third book. So I'm really, really interested, and I will most certainly be reading the third book here. This, I gave a very strong 4 stars, and once again, the reason for the 4 stars is just I wanted a bit more. You definitely get more of the elements that I wanted with the world and the magic systems and all that kind of thing. You get quite a lot more. It gets revealed a lot more of what the magic can do, and more information about the Yaksa, and more information too about the mothers and Mother's Fire and those kinds of things. But I wanted a bit more, and I felt like you could have definitely fit more into this book, and so that was the only thing that really stopped it from being a 5-star read for me. However, when my big complaint is that I wanted more of these elements that we're slowly kind of getting, it still means I'm really going to be interested to read book 3. So once again, I definitely do recommend this series and this book for those who like really fascinating world building and magic systems, as well as if you want something a little bit different. This is I probably should have said at the beginning too, but this is a more like Indian inspired fantasy, and so it gives you a lot of elements that you're not going to get in a lot of the run-of-the-mill fantasy. Also does have the romance elements. It's the sapphic romance in here specifically. So I know other people were, like I said, people really talked about that. Like that's what this book is for. I'm like, no, it's a rich world and magic with that romance that's done really well, so that it's not the focus, and it also doesn't detract. It actually does really add to the story. If you're gonna include romance, that's how I'd like you to do it in a story. I'm not a huge fan of it in general. It's just not my thing. But when you have it be such an important part to the story and really adding to it for both character development and the overall part of the story, that is really best case scenario, and so I think that's done really well here with the Oleander sword. So if you read the Jasmine Throne and you weren't entirely sure if you were going to want to continue, I would say definitely continue because I enjoyed that book. That was about a 3.5 for me. I felt like this did improve and jump up, and I'm really excited to see what book 3 in this series will do, as well as I should probably check out more of Tasha Suri's work, because I have not read anything else besides these 2 books from her, but really enjoyable with these first 2 so far, so I'll be interested to continue. So let me know your thoughts here on this one. That's the end of this. If you've read this, if you enjoyed it, if you read any of her other work or other things that are comparable to this, definitely let me know as well, because I have found myself really enjoying the series so far. But yeah, let me know your thoughts all down below in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Duo Discord. If you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all, it is a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.